Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. The hawks land in Japan as the BOJ hikes interest rates and unveils plans to cut bond buying. We'll look ahead to Governor Ueda's press conference and today's decision from the US Federal Reserve. Samsung gets a boost from AI with profits growing at their fastest pace since 2010. But Microsoft misses estimates for cloud revenue, sending shares lower. And Hamas says Israel has killed its political leader Ismail Haniyeh in an airstrike in Iran. We will bring you the latest. So from the geopolitics... So from central bank decisions to the geopolitics to the earnings story. Redheads crossing the terminal right now as we get the numbers crossing and another strong set of results for Spanish lenders. This time it is BBVA in the second quarter. Net income for this Spanish lender coming in comfortably above the estimates, just shy of 2.8 billion euros. The estimates had been for just shy of 2.4 billion. So it's a beat in terms of net income. Goldman Sachs had seen this bank outperforming. And here is the key line as well. BBVA saying it will, quote, clearly outperform its 2024 goals. So BBVA posting a rising profit. And that competition, of course, in terms of its bid for Sabadell, which we know is being overseen by regulators right now. BBVA saying Sabadell, the bid process is progressing according to plan. Net interest income coming in at 6.48 billion euros. The estimates had been for 6.45 billion. So it's a beat in terms of net income and net interest income for that lender over in Spain, BBVA, for the second quarter, and saying it will clearly outperform its goals for 2024. Let's switch focus to a company with a very different set of challenges. This is Lufthansa, an airline that has faced pressure in terms of its stock price, year-to-date down around 24%. Lufthansa coming through with some details in terms of the estimates. It is a beat, in fact, for the second quarter, adjusted for Lufthansa. Revenues in the second quarter coming in at just over 10 billion euros. The estimates had been for 9.73 billion. So it's a beat in terms of second quarter revenue for Lufthansa. We'll look at the load factor and, of course, their outlook for the rest of the year. We know that prices and supply chains have been a challenge for this airline, of course, as well. Adjusted earnings in the second quarter coming slightly below the estimates, though. So adjusted earnings coming in below the estimates, 686 million euros. The estimates had been for a little over 705. But on the top line, second quarter revenue, it is a modest beat coming through from Lufthansa. We'll bring more details on this as and when we get it. Let's check in on the markets more broadly. It is, of course, a major day for these global central banks, with the Bank of Japan right now in the spotlight. A hawkish move coming through from the BOJ, raising interest rates and detailing its plans to cut bond buying. Interestingly, as well, in the statement, adjusting the language around forward guidance, suggesting that further interest rate hikes could be in the cards for this BOJ if the data aligns with what they are seeing. European futures currently pointed to gains of 0.1%. We look ahead to the Federal Reserve, the next central bank, of course, to make the decision, and expectations and question marks as to how they signal, if they signal, that September is in the cards in terms of the first cut for the Fed of this cycle. FTSE 100 futures pointing to gains of 29 points, up 0.4%. S&P futures looking positive as well, looking to add 0.4% after the challenge of yesterday with mega cap tech once again being questioned in terms of the investment cycle around AI. Microsoft, the disappointment around its cloud business and its huge capex spend coming in above the estimates. Nasdaq futures pointing to gains, though, currently of 0.9%, a bit of a rebound given the picture we've seen overnight stateside. Let's flip the board and look cross-asset then. The focus, of course, on the 2-year in the US as we build up to that decision from the Fed. 4.35 on the 2-year. Of course, there's been a lot of work done in terms of yields lower at the front end. How much is priced in at this point? The Japanese yen currently 152, down 0.2% despite that move to raise by the BOJ and slightly hawkish guidance coming through. The Japanese yen at 152. Brent $79 a barrel, up 1.4% on the geopolitics and what is emanating in Iran. Again, according to Iranian and Hamas authorities, gold at 2,420, a bit of a move into that safe haven, up 0.4%. Let's get more details in terms of that BOJ decision right now, because the Bank of Japan, as we've mentioned, has raised that benchmark interest rate to 0.25% and revealed plans to reduce bond buying, underscoring its determination to normalise policy. The BOJ also unanimously decided to cut monthly bond buying by half, but not until the first quarter of 2026. Let's bring in Bloomberg Economics Senior Japan Economist Taro Kimura for the details, joining me from Tokyo. Taro, what a busy day for you and the team. What jumps out to you? How important was the statement and language change from this BOJ?
I was actually one of the economists out of the consensus economists who were calling the hike's going to happen in July, because even in the previous outlook reports by the BOJ, it suggests they're almost securing its 2% inflation target. And they show it in their dot plot. And actually, given that the yen has weakened in June, and there are more factors that may probably make inflation overshoot, and also the actual wage and CPI data suggests the wages and prices are going what the BOJ has been expecting. So therefore, it's natural for me for it to hike rates. And in terms of the forward guidance, it's really important that the BOJ underscored that the current real interest rate is at significantly low levels. That speaks to me that the BOJ's intent to adjust interest rates by hiking further with its update on its price outlook. So if in Ueda's press conference, I think if the reporter asks, is there any possibility for another hike in August, I think he will say yes.
OK, really interesting in terms of expectations of a further hike potentially coming through in August, because some had suggested, Taro, that maybe the press conference will be slightly dovish in terms of the language from the governor, given what we saw in terms of the statement, given what we saw in terms of the decision to increase rates and outline that bond buying programme. What do you expect to hear from Ueda in terms of more detail? Do you expect to hear a slightly more dovish tone from the governor? And why leave the bond buying plan until 2026 in terms of the cuts?
Yeah, sorry, probably I said October. August. I meant October for a potential next hike. Sorry, because October is the next time for the BOJ to update its outlook report. Sorry. Anyway, I expect Ueda's resolve, or Ueda's and his colleagues' resolve to normalize its policy. I mean, the ditching away from zero lower bound is stronger. And I think Ueda rather try to prime the market that they're looking towards more hikes even in this year, and steer clear on any speculations that Ueda and his team is dovish. And also in terms of the pace for quantitative tightening, the plan unveiled today is not as dramatic. Not dramatic and mostly consistent with market expectations, but it's very well detailed. They show each purchase figures for each quarter, and clarified the pace. So that means the basic signal from the BOJ is they are pressing ahead towards policy normalization in both rates and quantity.
Yeah. OK, Bloomberg Senior Japan Economist Taro Kimura in Tokyo. Thank you very much indeed on the details and the implications of what we've been hearing from the BOJ. Let's get the market reaction right now. Crossover to Singapore. Avril Hong standing by. Avril, what are you seeing in the markets in terms of the reaction to this decision from the BOJ?
Yeah, the Japanese currency has just been swinging today. I mean, the hike wasn't all that unanticipated because local media reports overnight had already been skewing in that direction. So when we actually saw the BOJ hiking as it did, we actually saw the Japanese currency weaken post-BOJ decision. And I think what really is important here, and as Taro has been outlining, is that the BOJ follows through, maybe suggests more willingness to continue its tightening path. Certainly from the statement, it was a bit hawkish compared to the previous one. And it also talked about how prices are skewed to the upside for this year and the next. All eyes will be on what Ueda says. For now, the yen is climbing against most of its G10 peers, not so much against the Aussie, a lot against the Aussie, I should say, as today we also got an core inflation print from down under and it unexpectedly cooled. So there's erasing some bets. We're going to see further RBA tightening. Let's flip the board and talk you through what else we're seeing in Japanese assets, because that bond purchase reduction, even though we're going to see 3 trillion yen by the first quarter of 2026, in the interim, it sounds like the step down is modest, much less than some in the markets had been anticipating. So bond futures actually paired some of the declines after that. Rate hikes good for Japanese lenders' profitability. The top performing sector on the topics, the Japanese banks. Let's flip the board again and talk through what we're seeing in the rest of the region. Today, we also got China PMIs just cementing the idea of a weak Chinese economy, but also from the Politburo commentary, it sounds like there are hints of easing to come. Chinese stocks rallying really hard today. We're also seeing the ETFs that are favored by the national team seeing a bit more turnover. The other thing I wanted to highlight in terms of earnings, HSBC did really well announcing share buyback. We're seeing its stock extending gains. Samsung also knocked things out of the park, really benefiting from the AI boom here. The focus shifting not just to Ueda, but also the Fed for Asia investors. Tom.
Yeah, and an important reminder, there's some really interesting and significant corporate stories out there moving these markets as well. Avril Hong, thank you very much indeed with a deep dive in terms of the market reaction to the BOJ, but also some of those earnings stories as well. Talking of the BOJ, of course, so raising interest rates for the second time of this cycle, and the forward guidance, and our economist over at Bloomberg in Tokyo suggesting that October is in play as well. That could be another move higher in terms of rates from the BOJ, and we expect, of course, to hear more from the Governor Ueda later in the morning. In the next couple of hours, we'll bring you the lines, of course, when we get those. For now, let's get more market context and reaction to this with Bloomberg MLive's Mary Nicola in Singapore. Mary, let's get your reaction to what we've been hearing from the BOJ, this decision then. Our economist, as I mentioned in Tokyo, sees another interest rate increase and hike from the BOJ potentially in October. What does this mean, I guess, for flows into Japanese equities? What does it mean for the equity or Japanese assets, I should say? And what does it mean for the equity story and to what extent it might challenge the Nikkei and the corporate story in Japan in a higher rate environment?
Well, the first thing we have to remember is that they're not raising rates too much. So it's not going to really thwart some of the gains that we've seen in the equity markets. I think that's one thing to keep in mind, is the fact that, of course, they're raising rates and they're moving towards normalization, but it's not going to be enough to stem the increases that we've seen, or to really put pressure on some of the corporates that and push back. So I think that's one key thing to keep in mind. I think the other thing really to keep in mind is the fact that, you know, the dollar yen is unlikely to come down very, very much in terms of, if we see yen gains, they're likely to be limited, because at the end of the day, we still have to remember that negative rates are still the rates in Japan are still deeply negative, especially when you compare it to other G10 currencies. So for that reason, that the upside on the yen would still be quite limited, again, which would still be supportive of the equity markets.
OK, yeah, and the yen seeing just very modest gains in the session so far, just up 0.1% at 152.62. And as you suggest, the moves around the yen very much dependent on what we see from the Federal Reserve, Mary. So let me get your views on that. Where are you and the team going to be focused when it comes to the decision from the Fed and the language from Jay Powell later today?
Well, now that the market is almost fully pricing a cut in September, it will really be about whether or not Jerome Powell does signal a cut in September, and whether he signals even more thereafter. So, and if he's in line with some of those dovish expectations that are in the market, or does he still focus on this data dependency? Remember, the dot plots only had signaled one cut for this year. So it really does depend on how much the FOMC shifts their tone into a more dovish outlook in line with the markets. so far it looks like it's still going to be dependent on inflation. We've had two readings on inflation that were positive and moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, we had a similar signal at the end of last year, if you recall, and we saw that the market was pricing in 7 rate cuts. So I think the Fed it's going to be hard for the Fed to get too far ahead of itself, and is going to likely still focus on data dependency and just highlight that the data is moving in the right direction.
OK, Bloomberg M Live's Mary Nicola on the market implications of this BOJ decision and what to watch for when it comes to the Federal Reserve later today. Talking of later today, here's what else we're going to be focused on throughout this day, and it is a busy day for these markets. 10 a.m. UK time, we're going to get Euro area CPI. Really interesting, given a bit of softness in terms of the inflation story out of Spain yesterday. Does the broader picture in the Eurozone align with that? How does that inform the ECB's next move, of course, after the cut that came through in June from the European Central Bank? 10:30 a.m. UK time, we're going to get an auction of 7-year debt over in Germany. 7 p.m. UK time, of course, is the big one after the BOJ. It is the Fed rate decision, followed 30 minutes later by the press conference from Jay Powell, of course, as you can see there in those pictures. Let's get back to the earnings story. HSBC performing very strongly indeed. We're seeing the share price movements, of course, in Hong Kong. We'll be watching this at the open UK time, 8 a.m, of course. You can see the picture there intraday. This is on the back of an earnings beat and a $3 billion share buyback. The CEO, Noel Quinn, of course, will be stepping down later this year and leaving, it seems, the bank in a pretty solid position. Pre-tax profit for 3 months through June rising to $8.9 billion, well above the company estimate of $7.8 billion, returning more cash to shareholders at HSBC, $3 billion in terms of the buyback. We're going to be hearing from the CEO later in the show. Now, another busy day, of course, for earnings. We're going to keep you updated as the pharma giant GSK, Instagram owner Meta, as well as Boeing and eBay all report. We're going to be speaking with the CEO of Schneider Electric on their latest earnings at 9 a.m. London time. You can get a roundup of the stories you need to know to get your day going in today's edition of Daybreak. Terminal subscribers can go to DAYB Go on the terminal. The focus, of course, on these central bank decisions and the importance of the earnings story, with the focus switching from Microsoft to Meta. Coming up, Samsung shares are up after reporting its fastest pace of net income growth since 2010. More than a decade, of course. We're going to bring you the latest on the big tech's big week of earnings. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Now, Microsoft's cloud computing service Azure posted a slowdown in quarterly growth, disappointing investors keen to see, of course, a payoff from huge investments and growing investments, by the way, in AI products. Let's bring in then, with the details, Bloomberg's EMEA earnings specialist, Chloe Melly, with the focus on Microsoft, and then we'll get her views on what we've been seeing from Samsung as well. But let's start with Microsoft then. So the growth came through for Azure, but less strongly than in the previous quarter. And then there was the CapEx spend as well. Those two lines kind of stood out to me. What were the top lines for you? How are investors reacting to this?
Well, expectations were really high, as you mentioned, for the cloud computing business, and sales have slowed down a little bit. They still came in, sales growth at 29%, but it was slightly below what was expected. And that kind of comes amid investors being recently a bit critical of how much tech companies are spending on AI, and there's still not as much payoff maybe as they would like to see. Last week we had Alphabet. Shares really plunged because there was sharply higher costs that overshadowed really strong sales. And now kind of Microsoft is at the center of those questions. And we've got CapEx coming in at $19 billion for the quarter. And the company has signaled that it's going to spend even more on data centers and servers. So that will be really at the center of what investors care about. And we'll see if investors remain kind of patient enough to see that payoff come through at some point.
Yeah, the CapEx spend is not slowing then. But maybe that's a benefit for Samsung, and particularly when they build out their memory chip components? Because it seems like Samsung is better positioned right now. What are you seeing from the Samsung earnings and how that company is aligned to this AI revolution?
Yeah, so as you mentioned with Samsung, fastest pace of net income growth in over a decade, beating analyst expectations massively, and a lot of that is due to the semiconductor segment. So the main product here is the high bandwidth memory chips. So that's really important for generative AI, and that's a product that Samsung has been kind of trailing rivals a little bit up until now, but now it's received approval from NVIDIA for certification of its chips. So that's really going to boost earnings, boost sales going forward. So it's really trying to ramp up production as well. So it's a positive, but it's still trailing behind a little bit. It's just catching up. But it is a good progress story there.
Yeah, it got the blessing from NVIDIA, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll see to what extent NVIDIA ramps up the sales, or at least the purchases of those chips, those memory chips, as you say, the HBM chips from Samsung versus SK Hynix. Chloe, thank you very much indeed for the details in terms of Microsoft and the earnings beat coming through from Samsung. Bloomberg's EMEA earnings specialist Chloe Melly. Now to some other stories making the news this Wednesday. Intel shares, sticking on tech, rose in late trading, with the firm said to be planning to cut thousands of jobs to trim costs and fund an ambitious rebound plan. Sources say the reductions may be announced as early as this week, with Intel also set to report earnings tomorrow. The chipmaker has been spending heavily on R&D to accelerate its tech and regain market share. Coming up, we will be switching focus to the geopolitics because Hamas says Israel has killed its political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, in an airstrike in Iran. We get the latest from the Middle East on this crucial geopolitical story. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, Hamas says Israel has killed its political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, in an airstrike in Iran. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Jumana Basecci, who has the details. Jumana, this is a major story in your region. What do we know at this point?
Yes, Tom. So a couple of hours ago, Hamas put out a statement saying that their political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, had been killed in an airstrike in Iran. It happened overnight at around 2 a.m. local time. Iranian state media also saying that he was killed alongside his bodyguards and that that Israel were behind that airstrike. Now, Israel haven't officially commented on the situation, but so far what we are getting is a bit of reaction from around the Middle East. The president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, saying that he has strongly condemned the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, calling it a cowardly act and a dangerous development. Just a short while ago as well, we heard from Turkey also condemning the killing of the Hamas political leader, saying that the murder aims to regionalize the war in Gaza. And of course, Ismail Haniyeh was a key figurehead, not just as the political leader of Hamas, but one of the key figures around the October 7th attacks on Israel, and has also been one of the key figures leading those discussions around a potential ceasefire deal that we've been speaking about the last couple of weeks. So with him gone and out of the equation now, it raises a lot of questions about how the region is going to respond to this airstrike and to the killing, and also the fate of those ceasefire discussions within Gaza.
So those are the key questions, aren't they, really, Jumana? Because the location of this assassination really stands out. The fact that this happened in Iran. So just very briefly, the response from Tehran.
I think you need to bear in mind that Ismail Haniyeh happened to be in Tehran for the inauguration of the new president. This is President Pezeshkian's first day on the job, and we've been talking about the fact that he's been painted with this so-called, quote-unquote, reformist brush. He wanted to open up dialogue again with the West because Iran has been reeling under the weight of sanctions. This throws everything into doubt again, and he will have to formulate a response. Yet to be seen what that response looks like.
Jumana Basecci in Dubai, thank you very much indeed for the latest. Plenty more coming up, including our interview with HSBC's CEO. This is Bloomberg. Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. The hawks land in Japan as the BOJ hikes interest rates and unveils plans to cut bond buying. We're going to look ahead to Governor Ueda's press conference and today's decision from the US Fed. Samsung gets a boost from AI with profits growing at their fastest pace since 2010. But Microsoft misses estimates for cloud revenue, sending shares lower. And Kamala Harris wipes out Donald Trump's swing state lead. Our new poll says it's now a dead heat ahead of November's election. Let's get back to the earnings story right now. We've been breaking the numbers for you from a number of different corporates, including the Spanish bank BBVA with a solid beat there. Electric goods maker and components maker Schneider Electric coming through with its earnings. It's a beat for this company as well. They've also, interestingly, raised their growth targets for the year as well. In terms of the first half, revenues coming in, again, above the estimates, 18.2 billion euros, just shy of 18.2 billion euros for Schneider Electric. And it is a beat in terms of the second quarter revenue as well. 9.6 billion, just shy of 9.6 billion euros. The estimates have been for 9.5 billion for Schneider Electric. We're going to be speaking, by the way, to the CEO of that company, 9 a.m. London time. Redhead is also crossing from the yogurt maker Danone. Currently, second quarter like-for-like sales. This is a redhead coming in above the estimates for Danone. 4% in terms of the sales increase of 4% versus the estimates of 3.8% in the second quarter. And for further details on Danone, let me just bring it up for you. But that is the key line coming through from that France-listed company, of course, in terms of dairy products. It is a beat in the second quarter. And other lines crossing like-for-like sales then beating estimates. Full year like-for-like sales. This is the outlook. Still sees like-for-like sales in the full year of between 3 to 5% in terms of the growth. So seeing growth still at between 3 to 5% in terms of like-for-like sales for the full year. First half recurring operating margin, a modest beat, 12.7% versus the estimates of 12.6%. And the second quarter sales coming in relatively comfortably above the estimates, 6.95, just shy of 6.95 billion euros. So it's a beat there coming through from Danone, and we'll see if there's any more detail in terms of the pricing and what it tells us about the consumer. But again, in terms of the like-for-like sales, coming in slightly above the estimates for Danone in the second quarter. We have the telephone, or at least telecoms company as well, Telefonica. We've gone from Spanish banks to the Spanish telecoms market and Spanish telecoms network in terms of the details and the earnings coming through from Telefonica. It's a second quarter revenue beat for this company as well. Here's the details then in terms of revenue coming in at 10.3 billion euros. The estimates had been for just over 10 billion euros. So for this telecoms provider, a modest beat over in Spain. The Spanish revenue picture coming in line in terms of what it's seen in that particular nation. The German story, though, slightly softer, and it's a beat for their exposure over in Brazil. Operating income coming in just modestly below the estimates, but the top line is that revenue is a beat for Telefonica in the second quarter. So it's the earnings story, it's the central banks, and of course it's the geopolitics all playing into these markets today. Let's check in then on how the futures picture is shaping up after the BOJ came through then with that interest rate increase, the second time, of course, of the cycle, and the forward guidance that further hikes could be in the cards for the Central Bank of Japan. European futures pointing higher by 0.4%. The FTSE 100 up by 37 points, up 0.4%. We've had a decent picture as well in terms of the buyback story and earnings for HSBC. We'll be watching that bank given the gains that have come through on the Hong Kong session. S&P futures pointing higher by 25 points. Chinese equities, by the way, have been rallying, particularly focused on tech. Nasdaq futures, talking of tech, the Nasdaq 100 still close to that correction territory, down about 9% from the record highs. But today pointed to gains of almost 1%, despite the disappointment coming through from Microsoft in terms of the CapEx spend and Azure sales. We look ahead to Meta and its earnings later today. Let's flip the board then, because we get back to the central banks from the BOJ, handing the baton on to the Federal Reserve then, and the expectation, or at least the focus, will be on to what extent they guide in the presser or in that statement from the FOMC towards a potential cut in September. 4.35 on the 2-year after decent gains, of course, at the front end of the Treasury curve. The Japanese currency remains in focus for us today. Strength coming through then, just up 0.2%. It's been choppy in the session, 153 on the Japanese yen versus the US dollar. Brent still below $80 a barrel, but gaining 1.6% today on the back of the geopolitics and Iran's claim that a key Hamas leader has been assassinated in Iran. $79 a barrel, 88 on Brent. Gold also getting a bid on that tension, 2,420, up 0.4%. Let's get to that HSBC story then. I mentioned the beat coming through, and we get back to the earnings with a focus on banks. Noel Quinn signing off his final quarter as boss of HSBC with a further $3 billion share buyback. The London-based lender also reported earnings that beat expectations, driven by rising income from global banking and markets. We spoke to Noel Quinn, who told us it has been a strong performance.
Really pleased that we've delivered a return on tangible equity of 17%, excluding notable items. So, listen, I'm pleased not only for our shareholders, but also for the 200,000 colleagues around the world who have made this possible to deliver a financial performance this strong. I'm pleased that the way that they've handled the past 5 years, the work they've done, the transformation, and the results today are testament to the work that they've put in. And, you know, match the heritage of HSBC and the strategic promise of HSBC. The financial results now match that. And that's why I'm also very pleased today that we've announced a $3 billion buyback program, having completed $3 billion over the last 3 months. And just, Jemana, just one thing that sometimes we tend to forget is quarter by quarter. But in the last 18 months, we've distributed to our shareholders $34 billion of capital, either via dividends or buybacks, and that's in 18 months, and $54 billion over the past 5 years.
So let's talk more about the earnings, and specifically that share buyback number, $3 billion, higher than what the market was anticipating. How do you square up the market's expectations of what you can offer in terms of share buybacks versus, say, the need to continue investing in the business or in other areas, or M&A, for example?
Well, we said this year and last year as well that we would operate a 50% dividend payout ratio. So 50% goes in dividends, 50% is retained in the bank. And that it can be retained either to fund growth and or additional buybacks, additional distribution to shareholders in the way of buybacks. That second 50% can do both and is doing both. We're retaining sufficient to drive growth, and we're distributing any excess because we've still got a very strong capital ratio, CET1 ratio, we're quite well above our target range. Therefore, we're able to both grow and distribute via buybacks. We do not pre-announce buybacks. We do it on a quarter-by-quarter basis. But I'm pleased that we've announced $3 billion today. And it's a function of the high returns that we're generating and the good profit performance we're generating and our confidence for the future. The other thing we announced today is a new target, a new guidance of mid-teens returns for 2025. That's a new piece of information we've put into the market. That is evidence of our confidence of our ability to continue to deliver good, strong financial performance. Even if interest rates come down, we built alternative revenue growth strategies to provide us with the sustainability of returns going forward as interest rates come down.
OK, HSBC's outgoing CEO, Noel Quinn, talking to Jemana Pasechi there. On the back of those results, the stock up 3% in the Hong Kong session. We'll see how it performs, of course, in London. Year-to-date up 14%. Almost 15% year-to-date for HSBC. Now, operating profit at Airbus has fallen by more than half in the second quarter after the company booked a charge at its space unit. That has forced the plane maker to cut costs amid lower than anticipated aircraft deliveries.
We have underestimated the risk that we have embarked when we signed the contract or when we launched the programs. So we have had to record charges in our space program earlier this year. Actually, we informed the market in June of our challenges, and that's where we are in space. So we have launched a turnaround of the programs.
OK, let's get more from Bloomberg's Benedict Carmel, then, who's been following all this for us, of course. Benny, what stands out to you from these Airbus results, then? Because one line and a headline around the space division at Airbus was not one that I expected, but you're the one who's granular on this company. So maybe for you, this was front and centre. What kind of stands out to you?
Good morning. Yes, you're right. The space unit isn't really one that we talk about a lot at Airbus. The company's most known for its civil aircraft. They make aircraft, they make helicopters, but also space and defense products. And it's really in the space division where they had troubles in the last couple of months. They booked almost $1 billion in additional costs at that division, and that really hurt the overall picture, the overall operating profit. In some ways, the good news is out, as in the bad news was out. They reported preliminary earnings a couple of weeks ago, so investors knew that the second quarter was a tough one. But yesterday, and we just heard from the CEO, they put a little bit more contours onto those earnings. They said they're doing a deep dive into that space division now. They're taking a hard look at it. And interestingly, when asked, might that mean that you'll get rid of it altogether, the CEO sort of kept it a little bit nebulous, but he did say all options are on the table.
OK, interesting. So maybe some optionality around the space division at Airbus. And of course, he was saying they underestimated him and the team had underestimated the risks around that part of the business. What was the read across then, more broadly, from the Airbus results to what we might expect to see from Boeing, which of course has its own idiosyncratic challenges?
Yes, we're going to get the Boeing numbers later today around midday in Europe. As you said, Boeing's had a really tough first half of the year, and it's in some ways a forgettable first half. The company has said that they're really burning through massive amounts of cash. And the question really will be, can they stem that bleeding in the second half of the year? Will things start looking up a bit? Will aircraft deliveries improve again? Again, the company really downgraded its output in the first half of the year. They've really slowed down their factories to make sure that they can get their production back in order. And what people will be looking at, what investors will be looking at for the second half is, can they get production back up? As a result, can they get cash back up? And most interestingly, who will run all of this? Who will oversee this turnaround? We still don't have a name for a new CEO. Dave Calhoun, the current CEO, he has said he wants to leave by the end of the year at the latest, but who knows? Maybe we'll get a big surprise today and they'll pull a new name out of the hat. So that's something we'll definitely be looking out for.
OK, the new leadership at Boeing. Maybe a bit of a poison chalice, possibly, or possibly a turnaround story. Benedict Carmel, thank you very much indeed for the preview, of course, of Boeing and wrapping the detail around Airbus. We appreciate it. Let's get to the politics of the US right now, though, because a new Bloomberg poll says Kamala Harris has wiped out Donald Trump's lead across 7 battleground states. This as the US Vice President rides a wave of enthusiasm among young, black and Hispanic voters.
The momentum in this race is shifting. And there are signs that Donald Trump is feeling it. Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. If you've got something to say,
OK, let's get more on today's Big Take from Bloomberg's opening trade anchor, Kriti Gupta, of course, as always, across US politics for us. Say it to my face. That was quite the soundbite coming through from Kamala Harris. And the mood in the room at these events for her has been electric, according to the people on the ground. So that leads me to the question as to what we're seeing in those battleground states and whether or not the momentum can last. Is this a honeymoon period for the vice president?
Well, that's the fear, especially given in the face of the confidence that she's showing. This is, by the way, really comparing to her 2019 run for the 2020 presidential campaign, where her critics would say she didn't show that same confidence. That's where the momentum is really coming from. It's a completely different Kamala Harris than they saw in the last time she ran for president. That being said, the numbers are crucial here because the swing states, of course, are what matter. Compared to her predecessor, Joe Biden, who was lagging by about a 2-point deficit in some of the swing states, Kamala Harris is now beating Donald Trump, to your point, and beating by a 1-point increase, specifically when it comes to Arizona and Nevada. Now, these are 2 states that are really important for our international audience because Arizona, despite having Senator Mark Kelly as one of the senators, of course, and a potential VP contender for Kamala Harris's campaign, is largely a Republican state. They have a lot of kind of energy infrastructure. They've traditionally been one that is a red state. So for that to actually flip in Harris's favor is a really big deal. Nevada has always been a Democratic leading state, but that's where you're seeing that gain. But to your point, this is largely thought of as a honeymoon phase, and that's why September matters a little bit more, because she has just now announced her campaign. She's just now hitting all the talk shows. She's just now getting a social media campaign. We still have 3 months to go until the election. So the question is sustainability, it's momentum.
OK, so we watch to see if that momentum continues. One arguably driver of that momentum has been this cudgel with which the Democrats have been hitting the Republicans, self-made cudgel by the Republicans, which is Project 2025.
Yeah.
And now we hear that the head of that project, controversial in terms of the policy mix within that plan, has been removed. What is the significance of that?
So this is something that has been, I'm going to put this in context for a global audience. This is a set of policy proposals that have been backed by previous members of Trump's administration, but has been kind of spearheaded by something called a Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank and is really known as kind of partnering with a lot of the GOP, the Republican administrations, in terms of policy. It's also known as kind of being the backer of Ronald Reagan, which is kind of this big figure, of course, in the Republican Party, and has been through the 1980s, where he took a lot of his policy proposals from this think tank. That being said, President Trump has pushed back against this Project 2025 story. Not only has he faced internal attack within the GOP for kind of leaning into more of that MAGA kind of policy agenda, but he's also getting that from Kamala Harris. In fact, when Kamala Harris accepted the endorsement from President Biden, she specifically said, we are going to take down Donald Trump and his Project 2025 agenda. And we should make clear that he himself has said he is not associated with it. He doesn't agree with it, despite some of his former administration members pushing back against it. Now, the fact that the head of the entire project and the director of the Heritage Foundation is stepping down speaks more to Donald Trump's kind of lead and dominance over the GOP and kind of more of that internal power struggle and practically kind of pushing back on some of the biggest criticisms that Kamala Harris is throwing at his campaign. OK. Bloomberg's opening trades anchor, Kriti Gupta, with the latest in terms of that polling data for Kamala Harris and what it means in terms of change at the top of that Project 2025 plan and how that informs the policy agenda, of course, of the Trump team. Thank you. There's plenty more coming up today, of course. A massive day for these markets in terms of what's on the agenda for central banks and earnings as well. 10 a.m., by the way, UK time, Euro area CPI, so inflation data out of the Euro area could be really consequential in terms of informing this ECB. There's a bit of a challenge because it's a mixed picture, frankly, on the growth front with softness over in Germany. But the inflation picture in Spain weakened yesterday. So a broader picture and spotlight on inflation and prices across the euro area later today. 10:30 a.m. UK time. Meanwhile, an auction of 7-year German debt. Before the market opens, we're going to get Boeing earnings. We've got a little preview there from Benedict Carmel on the back of that. And then this is really crucial in terms of the tech story, in terms of the rotation trade. Meta coming through with its earnings after market. And then the big one on the central bank front, 7 p.m. UK time. It is, of course, the Fed rate decision, followed 30 minutes later by the press conference with Jay Powell. Will they lean in to market bets of a September cut, the first one of this cycle? Coming up, we're going to speak with Anna Titareva, European economist at UBS Investment Bank, about what she's expecting from the Fed later today, how that ties in to the ECB decision-making, and, of course, a look ahead to the Bank of England, which is finally balanced in terms of their decision tomorrow. Stay with us for the economic analysis. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, after the BOJ, US Federal Reserve is up next. Bloomberg Intelligence expecting a hold later today, but with a hint at a September cut. Joining us now is Anna Titareva, European economist at UBS Investment Bank, for the views not just on the Fed, but the ECB and the BOE, which, of course, makes its decision tomorrow. Anna, thank you very much for joining us bright and early this Wednesday morning. Talk to us about the Fed, then, and how that informs the thinking of the ECB. The ECB will say, look, we operate independently, but, of course, there is the overhang of the Fed. If they do not signal that September is in the cards, if the language is not there, does that handicap the ECB in terms of its next cut? Does that derail expectations around September for the ECB?
Well, if we sort of take a step back and look at our call, we've been expecting the ECB to cut rates at the September and then December meetings for some time now. And in the meantime, our US colleagues have changed their call. They brought it forward to September. So in that sense, in terms of implications for our call, we think that signals from the Fed are a bit less relevant for very near-term ECB decision at the September meeting. We've seen from a number of governing council members the emphasis focuses on the incoming data around wages, inflation. So when it comes to September meeting specifically, we think that Eurozone-specific data will drive the ECB's decision.
And that data is mixed. Do you have clarity? Do you have a clear steer on what the Eurozone is shaping up to be? We're seeing some softness in Germany, a little bit of strength coming through in Spain. The inflation picture in Spain looking a bit more benign. We get more data today. It looks like a mixed picture. It's a challenging set of data for this ECB.
Indeed, it's very challenging. It's very mixed data, both on the growth and inflation side. As you mentioned this morning, we're going to get Eurozone inflation print. We're now, after the German and Spanish print yesterday, we're tracking somewhere around 2.5%, 2.6% headline inflation. So showing relatively little progress. But again, what we've heard from the ECB is that they are expecting bumpiness in the data, mixed signals. But looking forward to the next ECB meeting in September, in particular, they will be paying a lot of attention to wage data, which is yet to be released. So that's coming out in late August, early September, just before the meeting. So in that sense, that data probably is going to be
OK, the importance of the wage data for the ECB. The BOE, you think they do cut tomorrow. It's finally balanced. What moves the needle? And what is the sequencing then after that cut that you expect to come through from the BOE tomorrow?
Yes, if we look at the market pricing, essentially it's a 50-50 chance of a rate cut or staying on hold. Our call is that they will go ahead with the cut. In terms of key drivers behind this call, we think that from the data perspective, we're essentially there. When we look at headline inflation, it's at 2%, exactly where the BOE expected it to be back in May. Services inflation indeed is significantly higher than what the BOE expected. But if we look at the June meeting minutes for several MPC members, the fact that these upside surprises in services inflation were largely driven by volatile components doesn't really change the overall picture in terms of disinflationary trajectory. And finally, also, when we look at the last labor market report, we're starting to see more stronger signs of wage growth slowdown. So from the data perspective, we think all the factors are there. However, where we are less confident is around the lack of the communication from the MPC, the fact that we haven't heard much from them since pre-election. And of course, in the meantime, we've had changes in the personnel in the MPC with Deputy Governor Ben Broadbent being replaced by Claire Lambardelli. And essentially, we think she's the key voter going into this meeting, and a lot it will depend on her stance, about which we know very little at the moment.
OK, Anna Titareva, thank you very much indeed. Of course, European economist at UBS. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.